Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, the Israel military releases video said to show the final moments of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. The U.S. hopes Sinwar's death will bring Israel closer to ending the war in Gaza. What Hamas is demanding in exchange for releasing the remaining hostages and why those demands could stand in the way of a ceasefire deal. Arian Pazdar has the latest. A federal judge publishes a mountain of documents, adding to special counsel Jack Smith's January 6th case against former President Trump. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump holding dueling events today in battleground Michigan, where the two candidates are neck and neck in the polls. Luis Martinez and Jason Blair are in Oakland County with the latest from both campaigns. Early voting kicks off today in Louisiana, Hawaii, and Washington state for the 2024 election. It's also the second day of early voting in North Carolina. Voters are turning in their ballots as the state recovers from a deadly hurricane.
This is NTD Evening News. Live from our global headquarters in New York City, here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Tensions are high after Israel kills the leader of Hamas. The U.S. hopes this will bring Israel closer to ending the conflict. But a Hamas official suggests that this might not be the case. NTD's international correspondent, Arian Pazdar, has the latest.
Thousands of demonstrators rallied in Yemen on Friday. They commemorated Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, who was killed by Israel this week. Most of the demonstrators are supporters of the Houthis.
Sinwar has prepared for martyrdom, and behind him are many great leaders who are ready to take on the role of the Hamas movement.
Demonstrators, including children, could be seen holding rifles. Others waved Palestinian and Lebanese flags. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin addressed NATO on Friday. He says he hopes Israel uses the opportunity to end the conflicts with Iran's proxies in the Middle East.
Our top priority is the 101 hostages still kidnapped in Gaza, including our own American hostages.
But the chief negotiator of the Hamas terrorist group said that the hostages won't be released until Israel completely withdraws from Gaza. He also says he wants Hamas prisoners to be released by Israel and says that Hamas will continue to exist. This is the exact opposite of the stated goal of Israel's operation, which is to eradicate Hamas.
While this is not the end of the war in Gaza,
President Biden acknowledged that reaching a ceasefire in Gaza won't be easy.
We think that there's a possibility of working for a ceasefire in Lebanon, and it's going to be harder in Gaza, but we agree that there has to be an outcome.
Former President Trump also says he hopes for a ceasefire. He says he'll talk with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu soon. Family members of hostages are still hopeful that progress will be made now.
So I really believe that now we have a real chance to seal a deal. You know, I don't care about payback or revenge. I just want my brother back.
And Israel released this drone footage. It appears to show the last moments of Sinwar's life. A man is seen sitting in a destroyed room. The video shows him throwing a stick at the drone. Israel says the military then fired an additional shell at the building, killing Sinwar. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Federal Judge Tanya Chutkan released more than 1,800 documents today in the January 6th case against former President Trump. The previously sealed documents were found by special counsel Jack Smith to bolster his earlier court filing. The filing details evidence allegedly showing why Trump isn't immune from prosecution. Judge Chutkan released the additional documents after denying a request by Trump's lawyers to keep them sealed until after the election. But many of the files are heavily redacted. Trump's lawyers have until November 7th, 2 days after Election Day, to submit their response to Smith's immunity filing. The former president calls the release election interference. With less than 20 days until the election, former President Trump is in the battleground state of Michigan. NTD correspondent Luis Martinez is in Oakland County with the latest details from the Trump campaign.
We're here in Oakland County, northeast of the city of Detroit, in the battleground state of Michigan. As you can see right behind us, the stage is set for a roundtable with former President Donald Trump, who will also be joined by Republican senatorial candidate Mike Rogers and Republican Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. I spoke with some of the participants at today's roundtable before it started. I spoke with Lily Pilot, a college student here from Michigan, and this is what she had to say about today's event.
But I just think that it's important to show what you believe in and what you want for your future to look like, especially as a young kid. So yeah, I'm here today just supporting. I think definitely about inflation, because I'm a college kid, broke college kid paying for groceries. So anything that can he can talk to and talk about that, I think it'll be important.
I also spoke with Ramon Santos, who is from Cuban heritage. His parents came to the United States after the Bay of Pigs. He's originally from Dearborn, and he works in the manufacturing industry. And this is his take on Donald Trump's policies.
Well, this area is all manufacturing. I'm manufacturing, stamping, automotive, steel. President Trump's going to bring all that back to us instead of overseas. And that's what I think why everybody's for Mr. Trump.
I also spoke with Linda Lee Tarver, a black woman who participated in today's roundtable, and her expectations for November 5th is that women will turn out to vote for former President Donald Trump more so than the polls are suggesting.
I have not heard that many women saying they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. I think many of the women that I speak with, especially black women, are a little silent because they will catch grief by publicly coming out of the closet for Donald Trump. I think that that's where we're finding people are a little less overt in.
Former President Donald Trump is technically leading in the polls in the state of Michigan by 0.9 percentage points over Vice President Kamala Harris, but that's a statistical tie once you take into account the margin of error. Vice President Kamala Harris also campaigned in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as this is a battleground state. Back to you.
Vice President Kamala Harris does a triple header of speaking events in the swing state of Michigan. NTD national correspondent Jason Blair has an update from Oakland County, Michigan, where Harris will finish up her day.
Vice President Kamala Harris spoke in Grand Rapids, Michigan earlier today, where she was joined by Michigan Senator Debbie Stabenow.
And we will invest in the industries that built America, like steel, iron, and the great American auto industry.
Harris also spoke with reporters while she was in Grand Rapids and commented on recent events in the Middle East.
Well, my message remains, first of all, we have got to end this war. And I think that what has happened now with the killing of Sinwar creates an opportunity for us to end this war and bring the hostages home. And I think everyone wants this war to end, and this is an opportunity to actually get there.
This is Harris's 7th visit to Michigan on her campaign. Before coming here to Oakland County, Harris is in Lansing, Michigan, meeting with union workers. There are basically 6 Michigan counties that will likely decide who ultimately wins the state's 15 electoral votes. So it's not too surprising to see both candidates repeatedly coming to the same areas while campaigning here in the state. For instance, both Harris and Trump have events today in Oakland County. Trump will also be down in Wayne County later on, which includes Detroit. Harris is also scheduled to go there tomorrow to meet with religious leaders, which is also the same day that early voting starts in the county. However, Saginaw County is considered the biggest toss-up county. In fact, back in 2020, President Biden won the county by only 300 votes. And back in 2016, former President Trump won the county by only 900 votes. Michigan is also a heavy union state, which is particularly has been a big interest for the Harris camp. And absentee mail-in voting started in the state on September 26, which also makes things even more urgent. And polling averages by Real Clear Politics show Harris and Trump basically tied, with Trump leading by only less than 1%. Reporting in Oakland County, Michigan, Jason Blair, NTD News.
It's the second day of early voting in North Carolina. Its state election board said the first day saw a record number of early votes. NTD's David Lamb reports.
It's day 2 of early voting in North Carolina, and election workers told us that they've been excited because it's been like this for 2 days, and especially after North Carolina has been hit by a Hurricane Helene, since September, and now they're in a phase of recovery. I'm in North Carolina, University of North Carolina. Here's what voters have to say.
I think they'll focus on taxes a lot. That's a big thing. Also for me is abortion, and those are like the 2 big ones for me.
Border, economy, oil, energy, just mainly things like that. Border, shut down the border, stop the flow of the illegals and everything coming in.
Definitely love more FEMA aid because that's clearly like Asheville's been devastated and many of our like beloved areas like the River Arts District have been just completely shattered. So definitely approving more FEMA aid and getting more aid here to help us.
I know it's a gray area, but I'm still pretty strong when it comes to immigration. I'm personally one as well. I grew up in this area for 20 plus years, but I am originally Colombian, and I have a lot of connections with people when it comes to family. So I do know that there's a very fine gray line when it comes to the immigration that we do have coming into the country, but I do know that it's also not something to just cut off black and white as it's been presented so far.
Now, ever since Hurricane Helene hit, there is some voting changes to the voting process here. So people that are affected in the 25 disaster designated counties are able to submit their ballots into a different county. And those that have lost their IDs, which are required to vote in North Carolina, they can fill out an exception form saying they lost it due to a disaster, or they come to a site to pick up a new form of ID. And on day 1, they've received over 350,000 ballots. That's according to the State Board of Elections in North Carolina. In Asheville, North Carolina, David Lamb, NTD News.
Early voting began today in Louisiana, Hawaii, and Washington State for the 2024 election. Residents in all 3 states can now vote by mail or in person. Louisiana offers early in-person voting through November 1st, and absentee ballots are due by November 4th. Hawaii's early in-person voting starts on October 22nd in some areas, and mail-in ballots must be received by November 5th. Washington has also started early voting, with mail ballots due by November 5th as well. Voter registration deadlines vary, so check your state's website for details. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Joining us now at the Election Data Hub is NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, early in-person voting starts tomorrow in the battleground state of Nevada. What are the polls showing there, and how consequential are Nevada's 6 electoral votes?
Yeah, I think those 6 electoral votes could come into play here. I'll explain how, but first let's take a look at a recent poll in the state of Nevada. Now, this is according to Insider Advantage poll dated September 29th to 30th. Donald Trump actually has a slight 1-point lead over Kamala Harris. Now, if that holds up, that would be the best he's actually done in the state. Looking back at the last 2 elections, 2016, Hillary Clinton got him by 2.5 points. In 2020, ditto for Joe Biden, 2.5 points. But as I just said, right now, anyway, Kamala Harris with Donald Trump with a 1-point lead over Kamala Harris. So what's been the difference this time around for Trump? Well, let's take a look at some demographics. Let's take a look at the Latino vote. Now, Pew Research estimates that the Latino vote nationwide accounts for 15% of all eligible voters in the U.S. But you can see here, much higher in the state of Nevada, 22%. This is a key demographic in this state. Well, let's take a look at how Trump has done with this demographic in Nevada here in the last 2 elections. Nevada Latino voters, Democratic nominee versus Donald Trump. In 2016, Hillary Clinton had a 31-point lead over Donald Trump among Latinos in Nevada. Joe Biden, a very similar lead. 4 years later, 26 points. As you can see, according to Insider Advantage, that lead is down to just 3 points for Kamala Harris. That's a 23-point swing over this 4-year period. Now, if that holds up, that equates to a 70,000 vote loss here for the Democrats. Now, keep in mind, in 2020, Biden won the state by just 30,000 votes, so very significant here. Let's take a look at another demographic here. Nevada voters crossing party lines in their choice for president. How many Republicans voted Democrat and how many Democrats voted Republicans? Well, you can see 2016, it's a wash here between Clinton and Trump. Ditto for 2020, but in 2024, 13% of Democrats are going to vote for Donald Trump, at least according to an Insider Advantage poll, compared to just 9% for Kamala Harris. Now, how about Nevada's independent voters? This is an interesting one here. 2016 independent voters, 50% of them voted for Donald Trump compared to just 37% for Hillary Clinton. Clinton still won the vote, though. 2020, though, Joe Biden turned the tables on Donald Trump, getting 50% himself to Trump's 44%. And Kamala Harris actually has surprisingly held that up among independent voters. So these are actually some surprising numbers, but Tiff, back to that 6 electoral votes, that is the lowest among these 7 swing states there, but I think they still come into play. Now, Insider Advantage actually has Trump leading in the states of Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Arizona, but that would still leave him 5 electoral votes shy of the 270 needed. There's 6 in Nevada here, so if he gets this one, that could put him over the top. Back to you at the desk.
In Nevada, Democrats and Republicans in the state are in legal battles over so-called ineligible voters on voter rolls. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards reviews these lawsuits and more in this last major battleground state.
Several lawsuits have been filed in Nevada, the swing state that mainly votes by mail. With only 6 electoral votes, it seems that Nevada wouldn't be so crucial. But in this tight presidential election, every vote counts. In 2020, President Biden won the state by about 3 percentage points, although Trump beat Biden by a landslide in almost all of the Nevada counties. Biden won the 2 that matter most, Washoe and Clark counties. Remember this?
Joe Biden now leading by 22,076 votes in Nevada. What happened here? Well, we talked about this. Clark County, Las Vegas area, by far the biggest county in the state. They just reported a big bunch of votes, a little bit under 30,000 of them. And Joe Biden got 68% of them.
Clark County, home of Las Vegas, is the largest county with 70.8% of the electorate as of 2020. But the state's true leader is Washoe County, home of the city of Reno. It makes up another 18.4% of the statewide vote share. Although candidates can win solely by taking Clark, success most often favors those who carry Washoe, too. Now, former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are neck and neck in Nevada, which means just a few thousand votes could decide who wins the state. They've made the Silver State a target for their rallies.
25 days from now, we are going to win Nevada. We are going to defeat Kamala Harris, and we are going to make America great again.
And as you say here in Las Vegas, I'm all in. I'm all in. Even if my opponent is ready to fold. So there you go.
The candidates are getting help from their respective parties, battling in courts over Clark and Washoe counties' enforcement of election laws. First up, the Nevada Republican Party and the RNC filed a lawsuit 5 months ago against officials in those 2 counties. They're challenging the officials' practices of counting mail-in ballots without a postmark received up to 3 days after Election Day. Republicans say the officials' practice of counting those ballots harms Republicans because they vote by mail far less than Democrats do. They're asking a judge to block officials from counting the ballots. Republicans filed a similar lawsuit last month. The case accuses Secretary of State Francisco Aguilar of failing to legally remove potentially 6,000 non-citizens from the voter rolls. But Democrats have asked the court to dismiss the case, saying it's too late because federal law doesn't permit them to process challenges 90 days before an election. Republicans are asking a judge to order Aguilar to implement Nevada's new voter maintenance program. No decision yet, one way or the other. Since May, there have been thousands of voter challenges filed by one conservative group, including cases filed in Clark and Washoe counties. The group, Citizens Outreach Foundation, recently dismissed multiple cases because officials again argued that lawsuits were filed too late. The group's leader, Chuck Muth, said in a blog post that officials' arguments were splitting hairs and that once we'd get into court, it'd be a crapshoot. Maybe we'd win, maybe we wouldn't. Early voting has started in several states and many lawsuits have already been decided. For example, a state judge in Georgia recently ruled that members of the Election Commission must certify the election results by the state's mandatory due date, regardless of any suspicions of fraud. And in Michigan, where Republicans sued the city of Detroit, the city agreed to correct its poll worker selection process to ensure they hire the same number of Republican workers as Democrat. Tiffany, back to you.
A federal judge has temporarily blocked health officials in Florida from taking action against TV stations that run ads that support loosening restrictions on abortion. The ruling follows a lawsuit over cease and desist letters sent to broadcasters. U.S. District Chief Judge Mark Walker has ruled in favor of Floridians Protecting Freedom, which sued state health officials over a cease and desist letter sent to TV stations airing one of their ads. The ad, which began airing on October 1st, features a woman with brain cancer sharing her story about having an abortion at 20 weeks before current restrictions would have blocked the procedure. The lawsuit alleges the state's attempt to stop the ad was unconstitutional coercion. Florida's health department called the ad false, arguing abortions are allowed after 6 weeks if doctors agree it's necessary to save a woman's life. But the coalition says this exception wouldn't have applied in the woman's case because her abortion didn't save her life, but rather extended it. Judge Walker ruled the ad is protected political speech under the First Amendment and issued a restraining order against Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo to prevent further threats against TV stations. The restraining order will expire on October 29th, the same day a hearing on a preliminary injunction is scheduled. President Biden has left Berlin after meeting with leaders of Germany, Britain, and France. It's likely Biden's last visit to Germany as president, with the trip serving as a send-off. The leaders discuss conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. NTD's Noah Schmidt brings us more from Berlin.
President Biden met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz today at the Chancellery right behind me. This comes just a day after the Israeli military announced that it killed the leader of the Hamas terrorist group in Gaza. This is raising hopes the war could soon come to an end.
I told the Prime Minister of Israel yesterday, let's also make this moment an opportunity to seek a path to peace, a better future in Gaza without Hamas.
Hopefully, the chance of a ceasefire in Gaza and an agreement to release the Hamas hostages is now opening up.
The two also spoke on the situation in Ukraine. Just this week, President Volodymyr Zelensky presented his victory plan. Two major points of the plan are an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO and permission to use long-range weapons to strike targets deep in Russia.
We support Ukraine as strongly as possible. At the same time, we are ensuring that NATO does not become a war party, so that this war does not lead to a much greater catastrophe.
Germany and the United States have stood together to support the brave people of Ukraine in their fight for freedom.
Biden also welcomed Germany raising its defense spending to the NATO target of 2% of its GDP.
Please keep it up because it matters. Our alliance with Germany extends far beyond Ukraine and Europe. It's global.
Other international leaders also joined the meeting today. Among them, French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
British Labour Party staff members are traveling to the U.S. to support Vice President Harris in her presidential bid. They're planning on hitting key swing states, including Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Nevada. But the move quickly drew criticism, with some saying it's illegal and election interference. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us from London.
Nearly 100 current and former British Labour Party staff are going to key US battleground states to support the Democratic campaign. In a now deleted LinkedIn post, Labour's head of operations said she is sending staff to North Carolina, Nevada, Pennsylvania and Virginia over the next few weeks. She also wrote they will sort out housing for volunteers. It is understood they are travelling in a personal capacity, funded by themselves in their own time. It is not organised or funded by the Labour Party. The news spread quickly over social media, where it drew controversy over supposed foreign interference. But so long as the volunteers follow the law, they are not doing anything illegal. The US Federal Election Commission states that foreign nationals cannot donate money to election campaigns or spend campaign money. Foreigners are allowed to join campaign activities such as door knocking or committee events as uncompensated volunteers, but they must not be involved in the decision-making process of the campaign. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said he is ready to work with whoever is the next US president and has been seeking to build ties with both candidates. In September, he shared a 2-hour dinner with former President Trump in New York, and he also sought to meet Vice President Harris but was unable to due to scheduling challenges. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. Both Israel and the Hamas terrorist group said they'll continue fighting in Gaza in the wake of Israel's killing top Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. But the Biden administration had expressed optimism about the situation, saying Sinwar's death represents an inflection point for a possible ceasefire. The judge overseeing former President Trump's January 6th federal election case made public more evidence collected by prosecutors. These include witness interview reports, grand jury testimony transcripts, and records obtained through search warrants. Much of it has been redacted. In North Carolina, turnout on the first day of early voting broke the previous record set in 2020. Records show that over 353,000 people cast their ballots, even as parts of the state recover from Hurricane Helene. Both former President Trump and Vice President Harris are campaigning in the key battleground state of Michigan. Harris makes campaign stops in Grand Rapids, Lansing, and Oakland County, while Trump has events in Oakland County and Detroit. Joining us now to discuss the battle for Michigan voters are two guests. Theron Bond is a Democratic strategist and a campaign manager in local politics. And Timothy Allen Simon is a political strategist, attorney, and former appointments secretary for former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Thank you both so much for joining us. Great to see you both again. Theron, I want to start with you. Both candidates campaigning heavily in Michigan in this final stretch of the election. Give us a sense, with 15 electoral votes on the line, how crucial is Michigan for each candidate?
Thank you.
You know, this is a really tough question because it's certainly considered to be a battleground state. However, there are 49 other states plus the District of Columbia. And so what does it mean for one single state to get this much attention, focus, and engagement? And do I think that it is important for Michigan to be considered? Yes, but I also think that there are several other states in this country that deserve to have that same level of engagement. I was thinking about things earlier, and I remember getting very excited that the Scandal cast was joining Vice President Harris's campaign for a reproductive freedom tour, and me thinking that that would happen across several states. But lo and behold, it centralized around Michigan. And so while Michigan is important, I do not think it's the end all be all. I think there are several pathways to 270 that should be navigated.
And Timothy, in your view, how effective has each campaign strategy been when it comes to Michigan specifically?
I think it placed a lot of focus, attention around place an edge or advantage on the Trump-Vance campaign for one reason that they not control, and that's the situation in the Middle East. Michigan has a high percentage of Arab and Muslim voters, and I believe the Biden administration's position regarding Israel, what has been called fortunate response to the tragic October 7th attack, is whittling away at a voter population that's automatically been with the Walsh-Harris ticket. And counter to that, though, and I do think Michigan's a key battleground state, but I agree with Theron that there are other ones that are important as well, particularly Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. But you have the issue of women's reproductive health care. And that, even though it's not being characterized as bipartisan, it really is, because gender is on both parties. And I believe President Trump's position that the overturn of Roe v. Wade pleased everybody because it sent the decision making to the states. It depends on what state you're in. And clearly, many red states are trying to reduce access. And then I'll give the Harris campaign credit, or the Harris-Walz campaign, for demonstrating examples of where women who, by the way, could not gain access to health care in complicated pregnancies. Bipartisan. That's actually nonpartisan.
And Theron,
Tiffany, can I add something to that?
Please. I'm sorry to take so much time. Please. Yeah.
No, I think what my fellow panelists mentioned about Michigan and its focus, and he brought up something about the number of Muslim Americans that we have in the state of Michigan. And so I think it would have been maybe better received about the time that Vice President Harris is spending in Michigan if part of maybe whom or what she entertained were conversations with the uncommitted movement. There are 700,000 plus folks in that movement, and there have been things, said in favor of that movement and certainly opposing that movement. But she's spending so much time there. How much of that time has she devoted to actually talking to those folks to try to win them over? And I think that's the larger elephant in the room that hasn't really been discussed. And I think it hasn't been discussed because it hasn't happened. I think we heard a few things about it, potential meetings and conversations. And then after that, it was just like, you know what, we're on to other issues. But that's a really big issue that's going to be consequential for this election cycle.
And Timothy, expanding on that, actually, in Michigan today, the mayor of the only Muslim majority city in the U.S. presented Trump with a certificate of appreciation. He actually endorsed Trump a few weeks ago. That is, as 3 city council members in the same city endorsed Harris. Given that, though, how do you see the Muslim and Arab American communities voting this election?
Specific.
Ooh,
and when you talk about the situation. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Go ahead, Theron.
Oh, no, go ahead. It's okay.
No, I'm saying it is tricky. It's the affinity groups for minorities in this country. We are not thick. People have interest in the Middle East and even Arab and Muslim community. You have Shia, you have Sunni, a long history of conflict. You have the Christian that have fought on the side of Israel, like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, that in many ways, particularly after the Abraham Accords, are aligned with Israel. So it is a tinderbox of you having to calculate by the polls, who are you going to offend them to the level that it affects your margin of victory. And I don't, that's a tough one for both sides.
And Theron, zooming out a bit here from Michigan, vulnerable Democratic senators seem to be pulling away from President Biden and featuring Trump in their ads in a positive light. Now, those include Senators Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, John Tester of Montana, and Sherrod Brown of Ohio. Theron, these are all Democratic senators who voted to impeach former President Trump. How do you read this?
I think everyone's nervous and everyone is on edge. I think people are trying to hedge their bets, but they're also attempting to hedge their bets with consideration of, what if my person, the person that they've chosen to support, doesn't win? What does potential backlash look like for them? And then on the opposite side of that, what if their person does win? How can that help them influentially with their personal agendas? And so I think right now everybody is sitting, waiting and watching on pins and needles, wondering where this is going to go. But here's the thing. I think if they're appealing just to super far right, deep MAGA red Trump voters, I don't know that those are the voters that Vice President Harris desperately needs to win over. I think she needs to focus on members of the uncommitted movement. I think she needs to focus on younger voters. I think she needs to focus on apathetic voters, because honestly, the number of apathetic voters has not lessened in any capacity because people still aren't sure. And a lot of times, if they can't get something figured out, they'll choose not to participate. And that's what we really cannot afford to have happen this cycle.
And Timothy, what are your thoughts on these vulnerable Democratic senators who seem to be, putting Trump in a positive light in their ads?
Well, they're having to cater to their constituencies. And that's what a politician or a elected official is exactly supposed to do. Many of them are in districts or have districts within, in case of senators, within their states that supported Donald Trump, but may have also voted for Barack Obama, for example. So it's critical for them to capture what are those issues in the middle. And I think the target audience are the Nikki Haley voters. However, I'm being told that there are talks between the Haley group, or Nikki, former South Carolina governor ambassador, of actually teaming up with Trump on some campaign stops. I would pay close attention to that if I were Democrats, because that may shave off some of the voters that, as Nikki Haley, moderate Republican voters, may have gone with the Harris-Vance ticket.
A lot to watch here in this final home stretch. Theron Bond and Timothy Allen Simon, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Donations to Harvard University have dropped substantially after accusations of anti-Semitism on campus. Harvard's president calls the decline disappointing. Here's the story.
Donations to Harvard University are down 15% for fiscal year 2024, from $1.38 billion last year to $1.17 billion this year, and gifts to Harvard's endowment fell by 34%. Harvard President Alan Garber calls the drop disappointing. He says there are, quote, some indications that we will see improvements in the future, but added he can't get more specific than that right now. Harvard's endowment grew in value by 9.6%, but this was far worse than the stock market. The S&P 500 grew by 22.7% in the same period. Harvard and other schools have been embroiled in pro-Palestinian controversies after the October 7th massacre. Some students openly showed support for the Hamas terrorist group, and reports of anti-Semitism were widespread. In Harvard's financial report, President Garber pointed out that Harvard has task forces to combat anti-Semitic as well as anti-Muslim bias. This comes after many prominent donors stopped contributing. This includes billionaire Ken Griffin, who called Harvard students whiny snowflakes. Israel billionaire Eden Ofer, who said he was troubled that Harvard's leadership wouldn't call Hamas a terrorist organization. Victoria's Secret billionaire Leslie Wexner, who said he was stunned and sickened by the university's response. And Bill Ackman, who said the only hope for change at Harvard is a financial crisis. Donations are vital to keep schools in operation. In 2023, donations made up nearly half of Harvard's revenue.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. As the election campaigns remain in full swing, a new NBC poll finds 74% of registered voters are feeling enthusiastic about the race. That's considered low compared to most presidential cycles since 2004. NTD's Sam Wong was out in D.C. to find out how committed voters are in this election.
Cast your vote, and how invested are you in this election?
Harris has our vote.
Yes, absolutely, she does.
I think we're invested 100%. We don't like the way the country's headed, and I think as Americans, we got to do something to change the direction.
Very invested. I'm an independent, but I'm voting for Trump because I don't want to become like China. I mean, it's just terrible what's going on.
Kamala Harris has my support. I'm 1,000% committed.
I'm for Trump, and I'm ready for money again.
My candidate is Kamala Harris, and I'm extremely committed.
So Donald Trump has my support. I am very, very committed because I am really worried about the direction we're going.
Support for me is Kamala. Invested.
Oh, sure.
We will definitely vote.
Yeah, definitely vote.
Definitely vote. And
Yes.
do you feel enthusiastic about it?
No.
Worried.
No, I don't feel enthusiastic. I think we have a lot of work to bring people in this country together, and I think we all have a lot more things that we believe are similar than different.
Do you feel as committed as you did in 2020?
Absolutely. The stakes I feel a little higher to me than they did in 2020.
Probably more so. I think that, things happen that give you a negative feel for how things are going right now.
Oh, 100 times more. I mean, I hope and pray that Trump gets in there. He's the only person going to save this nation.
No, I don't think so. Maybe I'm tired of watching everything have gotten to the point that it's got to here.
No, I'm more worried about this election than the last one. Because of who's running, I guess. I don't know.
Well, actually, in some ways, I'm more committed. I'm in my 70s and I'm retired, and I think a lot of people in their 70s should retire and allow space for young voices.
I actually feel more passionate about this election. I've lived in Texas. I've seen what's happened there with the borders, totally out of control. I've seen what's happened with costs, completely out of control. Very scared about crime in cities.
We as a nation have to show the rest of the world that, our beliefs, our core values have to be met, and this is an opportunity.
Hundreds of thousands of visitors are flocking to the Paris car fair this week, where automakers from around the world are showcasing their latest models. Electric vehicles are at the forefront of innovation, despite challenges in an uncertain market. NTD's international correspondent David Vives spoke with industry insiders.
The electric vehicle market is closing in on 10% of the new car sales in the US, while it seems to be slowing down in Europe with the end of government subsidies. However, car manufacturers aren't holding back, and many of them came to the Paris fair to unveil new electric models across the board. French President Emmanuel Macron said during a visit that he has set the objective of producing 2 million French EVs by 2030.
7 years ago, we didn't have electric vehicles manufactured in our country, and today we're developing it, at a quick pace even, and so we're in the process of consolidating an EV sector that is produced.
Many US brands are present at the show. Ford is one of them. While the brand currently only sells in France, it expects to expand to other European countries. It's not surprising to find electric models prominently displayed at the booth.
All European manufacturers are almost compelled to make their cars with electric engines, and they want to enter that market as quickly as possible.
Ford Public Affairs Director Fabrice Devanlay says competition is fierce in the EV market.
The Ford Mustang Mach-E is the first electric car sold by Ford in Europe. This 5-seater family vehicle is fully connected. It's a Mustang for the 21st century, designed to stand out with 100% electric propulsion.
Some media outlets depict a very concerning situation with EV sales on the continent. In August, European EV sales fell by 44% compared to the same month in 2023, with a significant 69% drop in Germany. Some manufacturers, such as Alpine, are looking even further ahead with hydrogen engine prototypes showcased alongside their current models.
So this project is quite special because that's a hydrogen prototype we've been developing for the future. So it's kind of a laboratory. And at the front you can see that it's super soft. All the volumes are like flowing into each other. And then we have here like a special air intake who's going to give the flow on the windscreen and on the sides. You have as well the tank which is placed next to the driver on each side. And then when you go through the hydrogen tank, you have the airflow going there to the back to help for the aerodynamic of the car.
The Paris Fair will end on October 20th. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.